Hello and welcome to another episode of the Balls Up podcast, the podcast where we bring you the latest in the sports world, and we also have the Balls Up section where we look at the funniest moments and mess-ups from any sport that we find. This one's going to be a bit of a long one because we're bringing this out about a week later than we would usually do it because we've had quite a lot of stuff going on in the last week of sport, so...
Thought we might as well push it back a week.
Yeah, I assume this is going to be the longest one we've done, so sit back, relax, maybe grab a few snacks because we're going to be here for a while. We're going to start off with Speedway.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so it's been quite eventful since the last podcast, which was about 3 weeks ago now. Peter Young, he was in a nasty crash in Sweden. I mean, you saw the video, didn't you? He literally collided with someone and missed the fence and the air fence, went straight over the top, hit the floodlight pole. I mean, that was nasty. It just didn't look good. He went to hospital and he was discharged with just concussion and rib damage. I mean, how? This man must be made of steel.
That's extremely lucky.
Yeah, I mean, he started riding like pretty soon after as well. And like
Speedway riders do that. They'll have the biggest crash in the world and they'll be riding the week after. I'm not really sure how they do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. It's literally like...
Their bones are made out of metal.
Yeah, like nothing can break them. Now we've got some big news with Chesterchova. They had their licence suspended because there was some issues with the track. They did this track in a very different way. It didn't go to plan and they said that the racing was not going to be safe, and as a result of that their manager and also Polish manager decided that he was going to quit. They have now got a new manager and that's Piotr Swiderski. Now we're going to go on to the Grand Prix challenge. Now this has caused some controversy. People, to start with, were not happy about the lineup. Because normally it's done over rounds, you have all the riders who were in it for round one and then gradually riders get knocked out until the final meeting where the ones who come first, second and third in that final meeting go through into the Grand Prix. This year it was different because of coronavirus. They couldn't do all the rounds, they couldn't have as many riders in it as normal. They couldn't go to all these different countries like normal. So they had one round which was in Croatia. Each country picked a rider to take their place. But we have got our first, second and third place riders who are going to be in the Grand Prix. And again, some people are not happy about this. So Matti Zagar won the meeting, which isn't really a surprise to me. He was on pretty decent form in the Extra Liga and he often does well in these meetings. Second was Oliver Bernstein, and you know, he's young, he's a fresh face in the Grand Prix. A lot of people are happy about this because a lot of people always say that we always have the same faces in the Grand Prix, so it's nice to get someone different in. And third, probably the most controversial one, is Christoph Kasperzak. People are not happy about this. I understand that he got through fair and square, you know. He's not one of those riders who's consistent. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if it's his engines or if it's just the fact that he's not at that level. You know, he just isn't up to that standard. I mean, his extra league performances show that this year. I mean, we've talked about it in previous podcasts, the fact that he's scoring like 1 point a meeting at sometimes. And yet this guy is apparently at the same level as someone like Bartosz Smarslik, Leon Madsen, Ty Woofenden, who are all fighting to be the best rider in the world. Now we're going to get onto the Grand Prix, which have started. We've had 2 rounds this weekend in Wrocław. Gleb Chugunov was the wild card for those 2 rounds, and he did pretty decent actually, but we'll go on to that in a minute. For the rounds in Prague, Václav Milik has been named as the wild card for those 2 rounds, which are on the 18th and 19th of September. Now, of course, because we've been on about it in the podcast, that Martin Smolinski had that hip injury, and he was starting to come back for practice riding, but he's pulled out of the Grand Prix series. So Mikkel Mikkelsen was the next in line and he is taking over his place for the season. So we have to talk about the new point scoring system. A lot of people hate it.
I don't mind it.
You don't mind it?
I told you, after the first round, yeah, Lindgren benefited from it, but I said, you know what, that's just an anomaly. Most of the time it'll work out because we actually looked at it. And last year, like all but one of the races, the winner got the most points anyway.
Yeah.
So overall, you won't see much change. There's always going to be that anomaly with Lindgren in the first one, but the second round was absolutely normal. Everyone who got into the final deserved to be there. no one scraped through and ended up getting way more points than they should have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Most of the time, you're not going to see much change. I don't actually know why they've even bothered to change it, because it doesn't seem like there was a need to change it anyway.
The reason they changed it was because they said that once they got to the final, they weren't bothered about winning, it was just about points. People who are new to the sport would be like, why has that person won the meeting but they haven't got the most points? But then, like you said, it doesn't often happen. We're going on to the Grand Prix. They were both really good meetings. In round one, I've put this down, but then round two, I kind of take it back. So in round one, there seemed to be like a clear divide in the riders. There was the ones that were up there and that were going to be in the top 6 and the ones that were not.
And in the second meeting, it just flipped.
Yeah, I say that for round one because in round two, everything seemed backwards. I mean, you had Niels, he's had a real tough season. He's got a hand injury. He had a really tough start to round one. Round two,
he makes the semis.
I know, round two, he made the semis. So what do I know?
Niels didn't actually look that fast in his races though, but what he was good at is if he got in front of someone,
he could block them off.
He kept him behind him.
Yeah.
That's why he got that far. But then you saw in the semis when the track changed a little bit and he was on the outside gate, he couldn't get in front of anyone, he didn't have the speed.
Exactly.
So I don't know, we're probably going to see some inconsistencies in that case.
There was this talk about these new tyres.
I think it's just a load of hype. The things there's no way that tyres can make that much of a difference. Sure, they might have a little bit. You might get a bit more grip, you might get a little bit of a better start, but there's no way tyres are going to help you win a Grand Prix. It's not about the tyres, it's about the whole setup and the rider.
People were saying that these tyres are better because Artem Laguta and Magic Janowski, who won round 1 and 2 and did really well in both rounds, were on these tyres. But then they were saying also the riders who were at the bottom of the lineup...
Wasn't Lindback using them?
I'm not 100% sure.
I can't remember if they said in the meeting whether he was or not, but he was always coming at the back. I don't know. And Lindgren wasn't using them, was he?
No, he wasn't using them, and he did all right.
Finals.
Yeah. So people were saying that, like, the tyres are better, they're better, it's not fair but every rider had the opportunity to order these tyres. It's just the riders that have them are the ones that ordered them by the deadline. The ones that didn't either didn't order them by the deadline, or a lot of riders that actually can't use them because quite a few riders are sponsored by another tyre company, so it would be breaching their contract. So like Leon Madsen, I'm pretty sure Bartosz Marslik, they're not using these tyres because they're sponsored by another tyre company. We have to talk about Artem Laguta. It's something you said, isn't it, about him and Madsen swapping?
Yeah, because he looked like Madsen last year. It looked like Laguta had like snuck into Madsen's garage at night and switched their engines.
Yeah. I mean, last year Leon Madsen was that fast that they were testing and looking at his equipment like almost every meeting because they were convinced he must have been cheating because he was just faster than everyone else, but he wasn't. And I feel like this year it's going to be the same with Laguta if he keeps up his form from this weekend. We have to talk about, unfortunately, Doyle.
He doesn't have any speed.
No, I feel really bad for him actually because he was world champion a couple of years ago. I mean, he
probably should have been 2-time.
Exactly, because of that injury meant he didn't get his first world champion until a year later. So I feel really bad for him because you could see in one race in round 2 that he was in the lead and he was doing everything right. The only thing was his speed. And literally, Magic Janowski was right behind him, literally pushing him along.
He was pushing him around the corner.
We also have to talk about Max Frick. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't convinced he was going to do great in the Grand Prix.
Completely polar opposites between both rounds.
Yeah, I mean, in the first round, he was struggling to get any points. But then round 2, he did pretty decent. He even got to the semis. So.
Yeah, he looked like he had some really decent speed in the second round.
It's back to the Max Frick that we know.
Dudek was more the same inconsistencies. One race he was out in front by a mile, next race he was out of the back by a mile.
Exactly, he's very inconsistent apparently.
Madsen as well.
Yeah, it didn't look like Madsen that we know.
Coming into this year, he just doesn't have the same speed he did.
No. Heat 18 in the first round, we had our first crash of the season. It wasn't not a nice one. it was Smarslick was leading the race. Lindgren got some extra speed, cuts through the inside, they clash. I don't know how Smarslick did not come off. He's very lucky.
I don't know how Woofenden didn't hit Lindgren.
No, because Lindgren went down. Woofy literally had to lay down the bike to avoid him.
He slid right around him.
It was
some
so
Matrix
close.
kind of thing.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? Imagine in slow motion, it was like, vroom. How Woofenden avoided him, I mean, that is a high quality rider right there. And I think Lindgren was very grateful because that would have been nasty if he hit him.
I don't think it was necessarily Lindgren's fault though. I mean,
No.
he's going up the inside. I said to you after you told me about it, like, if you don't go for them gaps up the inside, there's no point being a racer.
Yeah.
I looked at it again. Smarslick didn't give him a lot of room, to be fair, coming up there.
I don't think he knew he was there though.
That is fair, because Lindgren was fully on beside him, but
Yeah.
Smarslick just completely cut him off.
Yeah.
There's nothing he could do.
No, it's not anyone's fault. It's one of them racing incidents that happens. But Lindgren did get excluded, obviously, because he came down.
It was
he
his
caused
fault.
the stoppage.
So.
But Woofy did say after he laid the bike down, his engine was not the same all night. But luckily for round 2, he was back on it because, I mean, Woofenden has had a pretty good start.
Half of round 2, Woofenden, he didn't look like he was that quick.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, like
got
his
some speed.
last couple of races, he was very quick.
Yeah, because, I mean, that battle between Smarslick and Woofenden was amazing.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's one of the best races.
They were together the whole time.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, they were passing, one was going wide, the other was going up the inside, they'd switch, and it was great. And even better, Woofenden won it.
If Woofenden can keep finding that kind of speed, he's going to be very dangerous.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I saw someone on Facebook say Woofenden has had his day.
Woofenden's definitely not had his day. I mean, he's had some pretty bad injuries.
But the thing is, you can never write him off, even with an injury. I mean, he won one of his world championships with a broken collarbone.
Yeah.
Watch this last 2 rounds, and you'll see that he is still fighting for that world championship.
Janowski looks like he's going to be the one to beat. My God, did he look fast.
Yeah, I mean, like they said on the TV, the good thing for Janowski, because we always see at the start of the rounds, he always does well like this, but because it's a shortened season, he's not going to tail off like he normally does towards the end, hopefully. So, you know, he could be looking at his first world championship. Okay, so we have to talk about Emil Sayfutdinov. I'm not really sure what happened.
He was absolutely nowhere in the second round.
I know. He didn't look great in the first round. I mean, he had some good rides, but he didn't make the final, and he just didn't look like he had that speed as what he normally does. But then in round 2, I mean, he was struggling to get a point. And
he had that massive crash with Chuganov.
Yes, he did have that horrible crash.
Chuganov just lifted in what looked like a rut or something and completely took Emil out.
Yeah.
They both went down. Dudek somehow didn't get taken down with him.
Yeah,
It was like an inch off Dudek's tyre, and Dudek managed to get out of that, but that was a big crash.
Yeah, it wasn't a nice crash, but they both seemed all right.
Chuganov, he had a really good meeting.
Chuganov did have a really good meeting, even with that exclusion.
Yeah, he got excluded and still going to the semis.
Yeah, I mean, it was close. I mean, we weren't sure if he was just going to miss out. But
I thought that exclusion was going to cost him.
Yeah,
I felt so bad for him. I was like, 'cause it's not his fault. He just lifted in a rut. There's nothing he could do about it. He's a passenger at that point. And if that exclusion cost him a semi-final spot, that would have been very, very hard to take.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, he's only a wild card, so he's not in all the rounds. But this is a rider we need to watch out for in the future. Now, we have to talk about Heat 14. What a race that was, with Madsen and Laguta battling it out the whole way.
It was like the one time Madsen actually looked like he had speed, and then Laguta still ended up beating him.
Yeah, Laguta, I mean, last year we would have seen Madsen go and pull away, but this year it was actually Laguta.
It looks like Madsen's dropped speed, and from somewhere Laguta's found a lot of it.
Yeah. Yes, partway through the meeting, Wroclaw were actually hit with a little bit of rain. I don't think it was too bad because they carried on racing. It just changed the racing lines a little bit, but it did make the outside a little bit more slippery, and the riders that weren't at the front were filthy by the time the race had finished. Because
you saw Niels in the semi-final.
Yeah.
Off of gate 3, like, you couldn't see his leathers, they're all brown.
Yeah, I don't think what helped is they watered the track before the semis, And everyone on TV said they should not have done that because these riders that have picked the outside gates did not have a chance to do anything. So in the final, it was pretty simple. Magic made the gate, but Woofenden was battling.
He was there a little bit, but then he had like a little lift.
Yeah, he
fell back a bit, and then it was just plain sailing for Janowski.
Yeah.
But I don't think Woofenden would have caught him because Janowski was looking way too quick all night for anyone to handle.
And then we had Smarslick in third and Lindgren in fourth. What a great meeting. I have to say, the first 2 rounds have been brilliant. If the rest of the Grand Prix series is like this, we're going to have a very exciting Grand Prix.
Definitely. Moving on to some Grand Prix that were less exciting, that's just to say the least. We're going to move on to F1. Since the last podcast, we've had Spain and Belgium. The Spanish Grand Prix, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Hamilton qualified in pole. No one could touch him during the race. That's how it went. Racing Point looked good in Spain in qualifying at least. They had some purple first sectors. Vettel went out in Q2 again. Again, it's pretty much the same as the whole season. Vettel was out in Q2. Racing Points looked quite fast in the copied Mercedes. Bottas had a terrible start. He ended up finishing in third, but he had an absolutely awful start. There was some terrible communication between Vettel and his team during the race, and you can just tell that relationship is not ending very well. It's not a happy
bit fragile.
end. Yeah, they've definitely not handled that well. You can tell it gets very tetchy when Vettel has to talk to his team on the radio. Ferrari have just completely got rid of Vettel. Like, they didn't even come to him with a new contract. They didn't talk about it. They just straight up replaced him without any warning or say or whatever.
I mean, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, I know he hasn't performed for Ferrari. He hasn't won a world championship since he came there. He's had quite a few issues in the last few seasons with his spins and everything, but just to
drop him
kick
like
him
that
out like that is a very harsh, and that is not a healthy relationship at all. And it doesn't help with Ferrari being so bad. I mean, moving on to Belgium, let's talk about free practice 3, where Vettel came last. I know it's only free practice, but he had the worst time. He was dead last, and Leclerc was 17th. You know, Ferrari's been doing bad this year, and they've not been up there.
Yeah.
But it still just shocks you when you just see.
Yeah, because I mean, Leclerc has been pushing a bit.
Leclerc's pulled that car up very high in a few races, but in the race at Spa, Leclerc was, after that first lap, where Leclerc actually made up, like, about 4 positions, then he suddenly just started going backwards. Then he had, when the safety car came out, he had a pit stop that went absolutely horrendous. Then he came in for another pit stop. That was slow because Ferrari were changing like the pneumatic pressure on the car. That was another 5-second pit stop, and it just looked like an absolute mess. Leclerc actually tweeted, it was a fun first lap. After that, awful.
God, I mean, I do feel bad for him because I feel like Leclerc is such a good driver, and he's clearly suffering from this bad Ferrari car.
And this is a circuit, Belgium, where Ferrari have been absolutely ridiculous at the last couple of years. They got pole last year. We saw in 2018, I believe it was, where down Eau Rouge and down the Kemmel Straight, Vettel just completely blitzed Hamilton and took the lead and ended up going to win it. Last year, in last year's Belgium Grand Prix, or not the Grand Prix, but free practice 3, where Vettel and Leclerc came last and 17th this year, Ferrari were 1st and 2nd.
Wow, what have they done?
Their times were about a second slower than them free practice times. In qualifying, the Ferraris did actually make it into Q2. Vettel was about 16 thousandths ahead of Raikkonen. That's how close he was from getting knocked out of Q1.
Oh, God.
Raikkonen was a blink away from actually beating Vettel into Q2. And then in Q2, Ferrari qualified 13th and 14th. They had absolutely no pace. It's definitely their engine, because I had a look at the splits. Sector 2, which is all like downforce, not really about engine speed as much. They were actually beating their times from last year. They were about half a second quicker. But it's just on them straights. They were losing so much time. It's their engine. They don't know what's wrong with it. We don't know what's wrong with it.
It's so weird.
But somewhere they've just lost all pace down the straights, and they were just completely sitting ducks on the straights all race. Hamilton in Belgium, he got pole by half a second. Bottas had a terrible qualifying. Verstappen was a 10th off of him, and you heard on the radio when Verstappen came into the pits, he couldn't believe it. He was like, "Oh, we couldn't have been that close." But he was about a 10th off beating Bottas to second. And then we go on to the race, and it was better than Spain because obviously you have the long straights, the slipstream is huge, and there was a lot more overtaking. But again, Hamilton got off to a lead, and there was no one ever catching him.
No, I mean, I feel like that just about sums up the whole season, to be honest.
They had some scary moments at the end. The tyres looked like they were going off, but
I did see that.
They were all complaining about tyre wear, and Verstappen actually dropped back so much that Ricciardo almost got him. If there was another lap, I know Verstappen was kind of like backing off and making sure the tyres got to the end, but Ricciardo put in a fastest lap and was about 3 seconds behind Verstappen.
Oh, wow.
One more lap, he dropped that gap from about 15 seconds. And then one more lap, Ricciardo would have got into third and taken a podium for Renault.
That would have
Renault
been nice.
were absolutely loving Belgium.
Yeah.
Best Grand Prix of the year. Best Grand Prix for a while. They were just looking very quick. Unfortunately for McLaren, Sainz didn't even start the race because on his way round to the grid, you saw some smoke coming out of his engine.
No, that's
and
not a good start.
Sainz said he heard the exhaust go. They pulled it into the garage and it was an exhaust failure and they couldn't fix it. There was no way they were going to fix that before the race. Lap 1 was probably the most interesting lap of them all. Leclerc and Giovinazzi made up 4 places each. Magnussen made up 5 places from last. And Gasly was looking really good on the hard tyres, but then we had the massive crash between Giovinazzi and Russell. So Giovinazzi loses the back end and hits the apex, which spins his car into the wall. His car completely torn apart.
Yeah,
it didn't look like
good.
an F1 car afterwards, let's just say that. But his tyre came off, went straight across the racetrack. Russell comes around the corner. There's nothing he could do. He couldn't get out of the way of the tyre, and the tyre completely took him out into the wall.
Well, yeah, I mean, them tyres are heavy. If that hits you, you're done.
Absolutely nothing either of them could really do. It was an interesting one after the safety car because everyone pit but Gasly and Perez. I understood why Gasly pit because he was on the hard tyres from the start.
Yeah.
And if he pit then, he would have probably gone onto the mediums, and getting them to the end, you would have been close.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot of laps to go, but I can't believe that Perez stayed out on the soft tyres.
Yeah, that would have been
He
the best
stayed
time
out
to
on the
pit,
safety
surely.
car, and then like 3 laps later he came in anyway. But it actually worked out.
Really?
It completely proved me wrong because Gasly pit about lap 26, I think it was, and they came through the pack so quickly because I think the commentators mentioned this as well on Sky, because the back was filled with Williams, who aren't that quick in the race, and a bunch of Ferrari powered cars. On the straights, Perez and Gasly were just getting through so quickly, and they ended up getting back into the points and saving their race, but I thought they were absolutely ruined, especially with the start Gasly had on the hard tyres. He was really up there and he was going to be dangerous, and I thought the safety car may have actually ruined his race because he could have got up so much higher. Like I said, Leclerc was falling back so far. Him and Vettel just couldn't do anything. Verstappen, his tyres were going off as much as the Mercedes, so there's not like there was anything he could really do to get up there. And he couldn't pit either because Ricciardo had so much pace. If Verstappen pit, he would have come out behind Ricciardo.
Yeah.
And Verstappen actually said in the interviews that he didn't want to pit because Renault had so much pace.
Yeah.
He didn't think it would be a very easy overtake, so
Yeah.
he was like, let's just stay out and keep third at least and not drop it to fourth.
Yeah.
And Albon went onto the medium tyres on the safety car, and you could tell that hurt him a little bit.
Yeah.
Because obviously he had a lot less tyres left at the end of the Grand Prix. He actually did a really good job to keep Ocon behind him for about 5 or 6 laps towards the end, but Ocon finally got ahead of him. And Lando Norris, if there was one more lap, he would have got ahead of him too, so Albon was very lucky. Another couple of not very exciting Grand Prix, and it is hard because Mercedes, their car is so much better than everyone else's on the grid. You can tell by qualifying, they're always about a second quicker.
Yeah.
It's very hard, but there's not really a lot you can do. I mean, Spain, for the last few years, has unfortunately become known as a pretty boring Grand Prix, but Belgium is most F1 fans consider that one of the best tracks ever. And, you know, the hype for that Grand Prix before is just huge, and then you get into the race and it was good, but
not amazing.
Not great.
You know, it would be nice to see them try and do something to level the playing field a bit, because...
One thing they are doing is, it's actually coming in for the next race at Monza. Also, Ferrari's home Grand Prix, another engine-powered track, should we say. It's called the Temple of Speed for a reason.
Oh, wow.
It's their home track, and they are going to be abysmal. It's not going to be a good one for the Italian fans, let's just say that. But
Temple of No Speed.
But they're changing, because the top teams at least have what they call party modes, which is they turn the engine really high up in qualifying. That's how they get more speed. But the FIA are changing it, so you have to pick an engine. You have to pick one engine mode. You can't turn it up and down.
Oh.
The one you use in qualifying, you also use in the race. So I'm not sure how much that's actually going to change anything. Mercedes have actually said that it might help them that they're doing that, and they might actually be faster.
Oh no, that's not what we want.
So yeah, but that is happening, and I'm not sure how that's going to change things. We'll just have to wait and see.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm glad that Lewis Hamilton is so amazing, because you cannot argue that he is one of the best drivers F1 has ever had, if not the best. But the racing would be so much better if they just toned it down a bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, Hamilton's my favourite driver.
Yeah. And
it's great to see a British sportsman doing as well as he is, and to be arguably the best in his sport.
Yeah.
And yeah, it would be great if Red Bull could catch up to Mercedes, or if Ferrari didn't have this massive drop off, because the racing would be so much better.
Yeah, just so they had someone to challenge them.
Yeah, you put the best driver in the best car,
and this is the results.
Because I keep saying this year on year, Bottas, you never feel like Hamilton's in trouble.
No.
Bottas has the exact same car, and Hamilton is so much better.
Yeah.
Bottas is nowhere. You know, if Bottas gets pole, if he snags pole, he can be pretty good in the race. But if he's behind Lewis,
Hamilton's just gone.
You never feel like Hamilton's in trouble.
No, I fully agree with that, because
if we had like Verstappen in that second Mercedes seat, wow, that would be an amazing fight.
Oh yeah, because I don't know, I just feel like Verstappen is more of a challenge to Hamilton.
Bottas is good, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't feel like he's that good.
He's too inconsistent.
Yeah. If we had even Leclerc, I'm not sure that would ever happen, because he's a Ferrari driver going to a Mercedes would be, especially Leclerc, that would be absolutely crazy.
I never say never.
But if Ferrari, because the regulations aren't changing to next season, so Ferrari, I'm not sure they're going to have much improvement into next season. And I'm sure Carlos Sainz is absolutely got his head in his hands at this point, because he's chosen to go from McLaren to Ferrari, and he's got to be regretting it even a little bit. As good as it would be to sit in that Ferrari, that is not a Ferrari you want to sit in.
No. Bring a Ferrari back from the other season, I'll sit in that one.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Leclerc, because I feel like he's being wasted. He's such a good driver.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that Ferrari, he's completely wasted.
He's not like... His potential is so much more than this Ferrari car.
You can see how he's getting podiums and top 5 finishes in that Ferrari car, and Vettel's struggling to get into the points.
Exactly. I mean, that's Vettel. won
Vettel
world
was a four-time
championship.
world champion.
Exactly. So he's not a bad driver.
Yeah, not at all. But Leclerc is being completely wasted at the moment, and I hope Ferrari get back to where they were a year or two ago. So we have some news away from the actual Grand Prix. So all the teams have signed a new Concord agreement. This agreement defines how prize money and TV revenue gets split up over each of the teams, and you have to sign this agreement to race in F1. All the teams have signed it, so all the teams are going to be back. There was a little bit of conversation for that because there wasn't sure. Mercedes weren't sure if they were going to come back.
Really?
They say that they got hit by COVID-19 pretty hard. But yeah, everyone's back. Williams, we know they had their financial troubles. They have now been sold to new owners.
Oh, yeah.
See, they're like a family-run company, and now they've been sold to new owners, and that's a completely different challenge for them.
It's kind of sad, really, that it's not in like the family
But the
anymore.
company, who are Dalton Capital, they're an American investment firm, they have said that they are keeping the team name, and they are not moving the factory location. Everything's going to stay the same.
So it's still kind of at its
They're
roots.
just giving them a financial boost.
Oh, okay.
We have some more races. The race total to this year is being taken to 17, which is the lowest in a while. But
Yeah.
we'll take it, considering what has gone on. We'll take any racing we can get. So Turkey has actually got its first race since 2011.
Wow.
That is going to be the first of the last 4. We're going to have 2 in Bahrain, and then the final is once again going to take place where it usually does recently in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, that's always a good race.
Yeah, that's definitely good to hear. That's done for F1. Now we're going to move on to the NFL. There's not a lot of news. We're going to start off with some bad news. Former Panthers coach and current Washington team coach Ron Rivera has been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah,
That's absolutely horrible, and I hope he can overcome that and get a lot better soon. You know, being a Panthers fan, he was the coach when I started to become a Panthers fan. He led them to a Super Bowl. So yeah, I really hope that he gets better soon. We've got a trade to talk about, which is from between the Jaguars and the Vikings. Defensive end Yannick Ngakoue has been traded to the Vikings for a 2021 second-round pick and a 2022 conditional fifth-round pick, which is actually not a lot considering Ngakoue's talent, but the Jaguars have been very poor over the last couple of years. They had a playoff berth not too long ago, but since then they've been absolutely terrible, and it looks like they're heading closer and closer to that number 1 pick in the draft. The Chargers are not going to have a great start to the season, as their star safety Derwin James, who missed 11 games last year, is set to miss a significant amount of time with a meniscus injury.
Oh.
There's an evaluation pending to see how long exactly he's going to miss.
That's not a quick thing to come back from.
But with the NFL coming back in about 2 weeks.
Really? Is that all it is now?
Yeah, it's not long until we get football back, which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Derwin James is definitely going to miss a big chunk of them games at least.
I mean, even if he does come back, is he going to be up to that standard with such an injury like that?
Well, a knee injury, that's pretty bad. So we'll just have to wait and see how long, if he's actually going to return for the season, how bad it is. Now we're going to move on to the NBA, and there's a lot to talk about in the NBA. A lot has happened since we last made the previous episode of the podcast, because before, in the last podcast, the playoffs hadn't even started.
No, it hadn't, had it?
We were just getting to that point where we were deciding who the playoff teams actually were. So we're going to start right from the very beginning. Since the last podcast, the Blazers actually made it into the playoffs. They had that play-in tournament with the Grizzlies, because they actually went above them in record, but they were within the 4 games necessary to make the play-in tournament. And they beat them 122 to 126 after a big fourth quarter from the Blazers. One team that will feel very hard done by is the Phoenix Suns. I talked about them in the last podcast, winning 6 in a row.
Yeah.
They won every game in the bubble, which is what they're calling the NBA inside of COVID, because it's like a little bble in Orlando.
Yeah.
But they won every game. they tied the Grizzlies' record.
Yeah.
But because they were based one position lower, the play-in tournament's only between the 8th and 9th seed. So they tied the Grizzlies' record, they won every game, and they didn't make the playoffs.
Oh, that's
They didn't
tough.
even get the chance. That is horrible. That is absolutely horrible.
That's not nice.
They played so well. They played their absolute hearts out.
What a shame. I
They
mean,
won every single game, which is crazy.
that would have been exciting to see in like the.
Yeah.
Wow, that's tough.
But because it was only between two teams, even though they tied the record, which is very controversial to be honest, especially considering it's to make the playoffs.
Oh wow, that isn't nice.
So moving on to the playoffs. Now the interesting thing about the playoffs is usually you would have home court advantage.
Yeah.
Because the higher seed would get, because it's a 7-game series, they would get 4 home games and 3 away games. Because they're all playing in the same place, there is no home court advantage.
Oh, that's a good point.
So it makes things a lot more interesting. We actually saw that in game 1 of the Magic and Bucks series. This is the 1 seed versus the 8 seed, and the Magic actually won the first game, but it didn't last very long as Antetokounmpo and the Bucks ended up beating them 4-1.
Oh.
Yeah, after that first game, I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh my god, are we going to get some upsets in this?
Yeah.
But it seems like the better teams are coming out on top.
Yeah.
Now, probably the most interesting series of the playoffs has been between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, the Mavericks were playing so well, and they could have been 2-0 up.
Could
But
have been.
instead, they were 2-1 down. They were very, very unlucky. Luka Doncic for the Mavs has absolutely come out and shown that he is one of the best players in the league, even in only his 2nd or 3rd season, I can't really remember, but he's not been in the league long, and he's already coming out as one of the best players in the league. We have to talk about Paul George for the Clippers, one of the best players on their team. He shot 23% from the field, which is absolutely awful.
It's not a good percentage.
I think there was only one game in the series where he shot over 40%. I mean, a good percentage would be about 45%.
Yeah.
40 to 50% would be a really good percentage. So 20% is very bad.
Ouch.
And that's one of the reasons the Mavericks were doing so well. But in the first game, Porzingis got ejected for pretty much nothing. Now, this is the Mavericks' 2nd best player.
Yeah.
The first technical he got was a horrible call, as it was a great block, but he got called for a foul and a technical at that. And then there was like a little bit of altercation between the two teams,
Yeah.
a little bit of pushing and shoving, you know how it gets.
I mean,
not a
it's
lot.
the playoffs. It's going to be like that.
Yeah, it's tense, yeah, but it wasn't a lot. And they threw Porzingis out of the game for like a little push.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the first technical was a load of rubbish, and then he gets thrown out for absolutely
that's
nothing.
unfair.
The Mavericks were actually leading at the time in game 1, and then they went on to lose after Porzingis got thrown out of the game. Like I said, the Clippers took a 2-1 lead. Kawhi Leonard was absolutely on fire in this series for the Clippers. At times, the only player actually working for the Clippers. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's one of the best players in the league. He does everything as well as anyone else in the league. And Luka Doncic actually exited the 3rd game with an ankle injury. The Mavericks, you could say, they could have been 3-0 up.
Yeah.
Doncic doesn't exit that game in the 3rd, so they have a whole quarter and a half without their best player.
Yeah, because I mean, that's going to kill some momentum as well.
Yeah, the Mavericks could be lucky not to be 3-0 up at that point, but at least 2-1 up.
Yeah.
Doncic then in game 4 hit an incredible overtime game winner that if you're an NBA fan, you have seen that shot. It was absolutely incredible in overtime to tie the series at 2-2. And this is on a bad ankle because he exited the last game on a bad ankle. He played this game on a bad ankle and scored 43 points, got 17 rebounds and 13 assists.
Oh, nice.
That's a triple-double on a bad ankle.
With a bad ankle.
And that stat is actually a first of its kind in playoff history. And he's set a lot of records with that performance, and he's only 21.
Oh wow, so he's got a nice career ahead of him.
Yeah, he's the real deal. Paul George struggling again. He had 9 points in that game. The Mavericks looked like the better team. They just didn't have any luck, and they could have had this series wrapped up, or at least been 1 game away.
Nothing was worked out for him.
Then we had the little break. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But when they came back, the last 2 games, the Mavericks got absolutely crushed, and the Clippers won that series 4-2. Like I said, in Game 5, Paul George actually had his best game and only good game of the series. Paul George needs to get better if the Clippers are going to go far in this playoffs, because with just Kawhi Leonard performing, you're not going to win many games with that. And they got very close to the Mavericks in this game, and a few things go another way and the Mavericks could be in the second round right now. Doncic was still great, but without Porzingis, because he got injured before the break. And after that, the Mavericks just didn't have what they needed. Another interesting series was between the Lakers and the Trailblazers. Obviously, the Trailblazers having huge momentum from their performance before the playoffs and their last quarter win over the Grizzlies. They actually won Game 1, again another 1 seed versus the 8 seed, where the Game 1 goes to the 8 seed, but this was all momentum. That's what I thought at the start. I thought, the Lakers haven't really been getting into it yet. The Blazers have just had completely all the momentum from even making the playoffs in the first point, and they won Game 1, but Game 2 back to normality. Lakers blew the Blazers out.
I mean, I'm not really surprised.
It wasn't even close, and at that point I did put that hopefully the Blazers don't get blown out and make it a tough series for the Lakers.
Yeah.
But the Lakers beat them 4-1 and no other game was close. Damian Lillard was obviously great for the Blazers, but in the last game he didn't even play because he was injured. So really the Blazers didn't have a lot of chance. The Game 2 victory for the Lakers actually saw LeBron James move above Tim Duncan to 2nd all-time for playoff wins.
Oh wow. Then again, he has gone a whole lot, hasn't he?
And he was 3 games behind Derek Fisher off the top spot for playoff wins, but after they won the next 3, he is now tied him. An interesting series was the Heat and the Pacers. This was between the 4 and 5 seeds. This one could have gone either way.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect from this series, but the Heat swept the Pacers off the floor in every game. Duncan Robinson was probably the outstanding guy for the Heat. In Game 2, he had 24 points. He was 7 of 8 from the field. All of them were 3-pointers. Like I said, the Pacers were getting bullied by the Heat. This is what I mean by bullied. I don't mean like they were literally getting pushed around. And Miami took a 3-0 lead, and in that game they had 52 free throw attempts compared to Indiana's 28. They were absolutely bullying the Pacers. And after they finished off the 4-0 series win, the Pacers parted way with their head coach Nate McMillan. Which, I mean, after a terrible series like that, can't really blame them. Houston versus OKC in the West was an interesting one because one of Houston's best players, Russell Westbrook, was actually injured for the first few games. He actually came back after the little break. Houston went up 2-0. I wasn't really surprised. They are the better team. They weren't really shooting that well, and they struggled a bit in Game 2. It took till the 4th quarter before they actually pulled away. And James Harden led them in scoring, but only had 21 points, and he shot 31% from the field. But they did have 7 players in double figures, so it was a team effort, even though no one's standing out. And
strength and depth.
I mean, no surprise from this stat, but OKC had just 11 threes made compared to Houston's 19. We know Houston loved the 3-point shot. OKC did actually pull a game back. They got it to 1-2 with an overtime win. Now, this is what I mean about Houston. This is proper Houston style. Robert Covington, who is a small forward / power forward, he is 6'8", was playing centre. Which, you usually got your 7-footer pluses.
Yeah.
The big guys. And this is a small forward or guard playing at centre, and he's only 6'8". And I put after this, Houston just don't like players over 6'8". because they traded Clint Capella, their centre, who's actually a really good defensive player and pretty decent offensively, but they traded him because he's just not into their play style. He can't hit three-pointers. If you can't hit three-pointers, don't bother going to Houston. Yeah, that is Houston in a nutshell. OKC did actually tie the series, but then Russell Westbrook came back, Houston took a 3-2 lead, and they will be looking to close the series out tonight when the podcast is actually being recorded. By the time the podcast comes out, the series will probably be decided, but that is tonight. Celtics and Sixers, we're not really going to talk about that too much. The Celtics absolutely crushed them 4-0, and Brett Brown has left the 76ers after 7 years in charge. Now, he's taken the 76ers from when they were absolutely rubbish, getting the number one pick every year, to now making the playoffs. It's good to see that they actually made the playoffs a few times, and they actually have a really good team. I'm surprised they got beat that badly, so they will be looking for a different coach into next year. Probably the most exciting series of the playoffs is, surprisingly, between the Nuggets and the Jazz. I wouldn't have expected this series to be the most exciting, but you'll find out why it's the most exciting in a minute. The Nuggets won game 1 in overtime, but then in the next 2 they got absolutely crushed by the Jazz. Torrey Craig actually had 0 points in 28 minutes for the Denver Nuggets in game 2. The Nuggets only scored 87 points in game 3 and shot under 40%. And they only took 11 free throws, which is ridiculously low. The Jazz shot over 50% in that game and 48% from 3, which is crazy. And at that point, you think the Nuggets are going to get absolutely blown out and this series is going to be a whitewash.
Yeah.
Not so much. Jamal Murray for the Nuggets and Donovan Mitchell for the Jazz are the 2 players to talk about, because they battled it out in game 4 and both dropped 50 points and 51 points respectively. The Jazz came out on top by just 2 points for a 3-1 lead, but that was Donovan Mitchell's second 50-point game of the series. His 57-point effort in game 1 ranks him 3rd all-time for most points in a playoff game. Mitchell and Murray became the first opponents in NBA playoff history to score 50 points in the same game. And Mitchell joins Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson to be just the 3rd players to score 50 points twice in one post-season series. But another player has joined that list, as Jamal Murray dropped 42 points to make it 3-2, and then he went on dropped 50 to make it a tie series to force a game 7. So now he has dropped 50 in 2 games. So now there are 4 players to that list, and they have joined some big names on that list with Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
What a series it turned into. It looked like the Nuggets were going to get blown out, but they forced a game 7. Jamal Murray is having the games of his life every game.
That sounds exciting.
Every game he gets better. And it's absolutely crazy to watch. So game 7 is going to be huge.
Yeah.
When this comes out, that will probably be done, but that's definitely going to be one to catch. The Raptors, last year's champions, obviously, they swept the short-handed Nets in dominating fashion. They scored 150 points in game 4. Don't worry about the Nets. This wasn't their year. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, their 2 best players, not playing.
They did well considering.
They made the playoffs.
Yeah.
They are going to be back next year. They are going to be back very strong next year with Kyrie and Durant. They are going to be one of the teams to beat. You can quote me on that.
Okay, I will.
But yeah, they had a lot of injuries. They had barely any starters playing. It was obvious they were going to lose to the Raptors. And like I said, we have actually moved on to the Eastern Conference semi-finals, at least now, with the Celtics and the Raptors. And the Celtics actually beat the Raptors in game 1, moving them to 5 straight wins in the playoffs. Now the Celtics are actually looking quite dangerous. No one really stood out, but it was a very, very balanced performance offensively for them, with all players scoring. And then the last bit of news from the NBA really is that the Bulls have moved on from their head coach Jim Boylan. We also had the NBA draft lottery, because obviously The NBA is a little bit different from the other American sports. They all have a draft, but the NBA like to mix it up a little bit. They have what's called a draft lottery, where like the bottom 14 teams in terms of record get thrown into a hat basically, and they all have a percentage chance. Like obviously the worse record you have, the higher percentage chance you have to get the number one pick. But an interesting one was Chicago and Charlotte actually jumped into the top 4 because of the lottery, and the Knicks dropped down to 8th because of it. The Cavs and Hawks have bottom 4 records but don't get to pick in the top 4, which again, the lottery strikes again. The Timberwolves got the number 1 pick despite the Warriors having a worse record than them. And like I said, the Hornets, they had a better record than the Knicks and the Bulls, but are picking ahead of both of them at number 3. The draft is very controversial. Should teams be allowed to do this? But it adds a bit of excitement. The Warriors got the 2nd pick to add to their already great lineup. They were in the chance to get the 2nd pick because they had terrible injuries this year. Obviously, they lost Kevin Durant in free agency, but Klay Thompson didn't play all season. Steph Curry only played 5 games, and they also still have Draymond Green, who is one of the better defensive players in the league, and also a pretty good playmaker as well. So to add a 2nd pick in the draft to their already good lineup is going to be a problem for next year.
Oh yeah, that'll finish off their team nicely.
Yeah, so now we've got to talk about the NBA, because they obviously had a little bit of a break. It was about 3 days, and MLB teams also had a little bit of a break. Not all of them, there was a few games that were postponed, but it's due to the recent events in the US, and the NBA teams and the MLB teams were protesting. And it's actually great because the NBA and Adam Silver, the commissioner, have actually given the players a great platform to actually stand up and fight for what they believe in this year. Because obviously we had all the George Floyd protests before, and obviously I stand with the players.
Yeah.
I didn't know if the playoffs were going to actually continue. There was actually talks of them not continuing at all. The NBA players have agreed to come back. They actually signed an agreement with the league and to help fight racial injustice in all the states that NBA teams are actually in. Moving on to the MLB, the season's well underway now. Pretty sure we're almost about halfway through the season in this shortened game.
Wow,
because it's
crazy.
short. And there's only 60 games, like we've said before. First thing to talk about is the Yankees have actually fallen off quite a bit in the division, and the Rays have now actually taken the division lead for them. The Yankees have had more injury problems. This is the same thing every year. I feel like the Yankees always have injury problems. Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, 2 of their best players, have been injured, so that's not helped them, and their pitching's still not great. Obviously they signed Garrett Cole in free agency. It was a big name signing, but he's actually come back down to earth from his insane season. He's got a 3+ ERA. It's not the Garrett Cole from the Astros, let's just say that, as good of a pitcher as he actually is. And I mean, that was always my question mark. Sure, he's been a good pitcher for the last 2 years, but can he keep it up? Because before he went to the Astros, he was a good pitcher, but he wasn't anything special. He wasn't Cy Young candidate.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's come back down to earth, and that's not helped him out because their pitching staff just isn't that great. I mean, Paxton has been no good for the Yankees since coming over from Seattle a few years ago. Luis Severino pitched 3 games last year, and he's pitched none this year. Tanaka's hit or miss, but I feel like he's mostly missed.
Yeah.
He can be a good pitcher, but not great, and they're struggling for 4th and 5th starters. J.A. Happ's getting old, and he's not really that great anymore.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Luke Voigt is actually leading the Yankees on most offensive categories. He's leading batting average, home runs, RBIs. He's having the season of his life.
It's a shame the rest of his team aren't.
Yeah, but they're still within reaching distance of the Rays, so that's going to be an interesting battle for the division. The Astros have saved their season. They had a 9-game losing streak at one point, but now they're only a few games behind the A's, and in a shortened season like this, a 9-game losing streak could ruin your season.
Yeah.
But with their injury problems, it wasn't really a surprise, but they've actually called it back and they're only within a few games now. Some interesting news for Dodgers rookie catcher Keibert Ruiz. In his first ever MLB at bat, he hit a home run.
Oh, what a start.
Dodgers in general look a step ahead of everyone else. They are storming their division and they look unstoppable, really. I mean, Mookie, after moving from the Red Sox to the Dodgers, is settling into life very well in LA. He's tied the record for most 3 home run games at 6. He is the fastest to do it after he had his 3-run home game not too long ago. And they're doing this with their reigning NL MVP from last year, Cody Bellinger. He started off slow and he's actually begun to pick it up now, but they were absolutely storming everyone with their best player arguably not performing. I mean, we all know the Dodgers have probably the best pitching staff in the MLB easily, and with Mookie Betts looking like his MVP self.
We all know what he's capable of.
Yeah, he's looking very good. But if the Dodgers do slip up, though, they are definitely not off the hook in the division, as San Diego are absolutely charging for them. If the Dodgers slip up, they are there to take it.
Yeah.
They just can't stop hitting grand slams. That's where like the bases are loaded.
Yeah.
And you hit a home run. That's the most amount of runs you can score off a hit. They became the first team to hit a grand slam in 4 consecutive games, and they hit 5 grand slams in 6 games. That's absolutely crazy.
That's a good start.
And we'll get to the trades in a minute, but the San Diego Padres have gone absolutely wild in the trades. They're just trading everyone.
Really?
They're going for everyone. They've traded for at least like 7 or 8 players.
Oh, wow.
The AL Central is probably the most interesting division, with the Twins, White Sox and Indians covered by 1.5 games. They're all very close.
Yeah.
And the Twins are actually starting to slip up a little bit as they've lost 5 games in a row.
Oh.
So that could really be huge in a division that's that close.
Yeah.
Atlanta are leading the poor NL East, though the Phillies are coming at them. They have traded for some pitching help and are really surging now in a division that's been very poor this year. The Nationals are bottom of the division, actually, with a 12-19 record currently.
What a shame after last season.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to be defending their world championship. But interestingly, Juan Soto and Trey Turner are both leading the MLB in batting average.
How?
They both have a 360 average, but their team's last in the division and they're 5.5 games back.
How are they doing so well, but they're so low in the table?
They have had pitching problems. Scherzer, I know, pitched the other night against the Red Sox and actually did really well, but I'm not sure if he's had some problems. But they've had pitching injuries, they've had pitching problems.
I mean, hopefully they can bring it back.
But yeah, it's kind of a similar situation to the Red Sox, I guess. Their pitching's not been great.
But
the batting's really good. The Cubs are looking very good for the NL Central. They are the only team in that division that are actually above 500, so that is not a very good division at all.
No.
And now we're going to move on to the trades. Red Sox are the head of the trade so far. Obviously, they are struggling. They have one of the highest team salaries in the MLB, and they're one of the worst teams in the MLB.
Not the right way
So they
around.
are obviously looking to get rid of salary and pick up prospects. They have traded Workman and Hembree, 2 relief pitchers, to Philly, and Philly also picked up David Hale from the Yanks. And the Red Sox have also traded Mitch Moreland, who is on a 1-year deal. He is having a career year, you've got to say. He's batting .328 with 8 home runs. He heads to San Diego to help them out. And there are talks of Xander Bogaerts, the Red Sox shortstop, being the next to be traded.
Oh.
Similar situation to Mookie, I guess, one of the star players. But Bogaerts is on a long-term deal. He's being paid about $20 million each year for about the next 7 years.
They need to get that salary down. Then.
Yeah, they need to get the salary down, and that could be an easy way to do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because Xander's a really good player, but the Red Sox just aren't there right now.
No.
And like I said before, a couple of episodes back, you can have the best bats in the world, but if your pitchers are giving up more runs, it doesn't matter.
No, you haven't got a chance.
Padres, again, they have picked up a couple more players. Jason Castro, catcher from the Angels, and right-handed pitcher Trevor Rosenthal from the Royals. The White Sox have acquired veteran Jared Dyson from the struggling Pirates to help their division push. Dyson's a good rotation player and he's quite quick, so he'll be a good pinch runner too, and that'll be very good for the playoffs. The trade deadline is today when we're recording this. It will be over by the time this comes out, but there'll be trades all through today, I'm sure, and there already has been. The Cubs have picked up DH Jose Martinez from the Rays, and obviously the NL are using the DH rule this year, which they usually don't. The A's have basically swapped Franklin Barreto for the Angels infielder Tommy La Stella to help their divisional push. Interdivisional trade, which you don't usually see very often from the MLB. You don't want to help out a division rival, but La Stella is in the last year of his contract, and Franklin Barreto is a former top 50 prospect for the A's, is one that can maybe help out the struggling Angels who are looking for something different.
Yeah.
And like I said, La Stella's on a 1-year deal, so good to get something for him.
Yeah, you might as well.
And the Blue Jays have traded for 2 players, pitcher Taijuan Walker and Daniel Vogelbach, both from the Mariners, to help their young team, really, because they are pushing still for the AL East with the Yankees and the Rays obviously leading it, but their young team is looking very good, actually. So that is it for the American sports portion of this podcast. And now we're going to go on to some snooker. Now, we don't usually talk about snooker that much on this podcast. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit in extras, because I don't watch snooker that often, but I watched some of the World Championships, obviously the biggest tournament of the year, and we had some great games. We had the semi-finals between Ronnie O'Sullivan and Mark Selby. Now, that's a classic matchup for you. 2 of the best players in the world.
Oh, yeah.
See, O'Sullivan was doing his thing where, you know, he's great at times, but at other times he just completely shocks you. He plays some absolutely ridiculous shots. He throws away frames, you know. 2 completely different styles in this match. Yeah. Selby's a lot more tactical and slower, more of a safety player. But O'Sullivan just wants to get in there and get the frame done in about 2 minutes. He doesn't like to sit around and wait. So yeah, you see in safety battles, because Mark Selby can be very annoying in them safety battles, but he's very good at it, and O'Sullivan's just not one to sit around for half an hour in a frame. Not
as tactical.
Yeah, that's just not the player he wants to be. Selby actually went up 16-14 in a first to 17. And then close. All of a sudden, Ronnie O'Sullivan flipped a switch and took the next 2 frames, playing absolutely immaculate. And I said after this, if he had played like that the whole time,
it would have been done quicker, which is...
O'Sullivan's untouchable when he wants to be.
It's quite funny, really, because if he'd have played like that from the start, then it would have been done quicker, and that's what he wants to do in snooker anyway. He just wants it done.
When Selby went 16-14 up, I said before, I guarantee O'Sullivan wins the next 2 frames and then blows the last frame.
Oh.
He didn't blow the last frame, or at least Selby didn't let him blow the last frame.
Oh.
It was an insane end, and O'Sullivan couldn't clear up. He got 64 ahead, 1 pot basically from winning.
Yeah.
And he blew it. He was actually 2 balls away from winning, but Selby only managed 34 points. He had a couple of tough shots and he couldn't quite get back. Ronnie O'Sullivan is a lucky, lucky man to be in that world final. There were some great safety shots for both of them. Selby actually caught the middle jaw on one of his safety shots, and Ronnie managed to clean up. I couldn't believe he actually won it. I almost called it.
Lucky.
The other semi-final between Kyron Wilson and Anthony McGill was probably even more interesting. This went down to a last frame decider.
Oh.
And Kyron Wilson won it on a fluke.
A fluke.
He was playing a safety shot on the green and it found the middle pocket.
Oh.
It went straight in. He secured his World Championship place on a float in the last frame decider.
Wow, that...
You couldn't be more unlucky if you're Anthony
No.
McGill. And you could see Kyron Wilson's face. He was absolutely devastated.
You couldn't make this stuff up.
Like, Kyron Wilson had just made a World Championship final and he was absolutely devastated because
Yeah.
that's not the way he wanted to do it. As soon as that green went in, he literally just laid on the table with his head in his hands. And after he actually won it, he went to Anthony McGill and just apologised to him. But, oh my God, that is not the way you want a World Championship semi-final to end.
Definitely not.
It was a crazy match. It was a great match, and Kyron Wilson definitely deserves to be in a world final when he wants to be. He's one of the best players in the world, as he showed. But it wasn't the World Championship for him. It was his first ever. This is Ronnie's 6th, I believe.
Yeah, I know Sullivan has been
Actually,
there
I
a
believe
lot.
it's his 7th, but he's won 6 of them now, because Ronnie O'Sullivan actually managed to take this. The first day was actually very interesting. There was a lot of scrappy frames. Both players were missing. O'Sullivan edged it, but it was well below his best, and he was actually saying all throughout the week, pretty much, that he was struggling with his cue action.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't find any rhythm. But to make a World Championship final without any rhythm, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But yeah, he shouldn't have been 3 frames up. He went into the second day 10-7 up. Kyron Wilson probably should have been ahead. Or at least tied.
Yeah.
But Kyron Wilson was missing way too much. I kind of felt bad from his first World Championship and it just didn't go the way he wanted to. He was missing a lot of shots.
Maybe it's pressure.
Maybe. I mean, you can let him off.
Yeah.
First World Championship ever, he's going to get better and hopefully he learns from this and comes back stronger in the next few years. The second day, Wilson actually started well. O'Sullivan wins a frame after 3 tries and then pulls away because Wilson won the first frame of the day. And O'Sullivan just cleared off because it was 10-7 going into the second day, and Ronnie ended up winning 18-8.
Oh, yeah, that's not great.
We went into the final session, obviously 17-8. I don't know why they even bothered waiting because it was 1 frame. Ronnie comes up in the evening session, clears up 1 frame and wins the World Championship.
Yeah,
they might as well have played it there because Ronnie O'Sullivan he looked very focused. Like, this wasn't the match against Mark Selby where he was throwing away some frames because he couldn't be bothered. Ronnie O'Sullivan was playing them safely.
Yeah.
Like, this was a World Championship final, you could tell. Ronnie was a different player.
Yeah.
And he absolutely blitzed Kyron. He wasn't perfect and he still missed a couple, but Kyron was absolutely played off the table. He was really struggling.
Yeah.
But like I said, hopefully he comes back stronger in the next few years. He's still quite young.
Yeah.
Still quite early on into his professional career. Some news for the next year's calendar. The first 8 events of the 2020-2021 season will all be played in Milton Keynes at the same arena. And this is actually a really good idea due to COVID. Players won't have to travel.
Yeah.
So all of the first 8 events will be played in Milton Keynes.
Yeah, I mean, this time, for when that starts, we don't know what the situation's going to be like, so it's good that they're thinking ahead like that.
Yeah, definitely. Now we're going on to football, and we've got quite a lot to talk about. We've had the Europa League finish up and the Champions League finish up, and then we've got all the transfers to talk about. We've also got the new Premier League schedule. I'm going to start with the Europa League. I'm going to start from the semis. I can't really remember how much I talked about this 3 weeks ago. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
But I believe we finished off with Man United just beating Copenhagen with a penalty.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, Man United had another penalty in the semi-finals, but they lost 2-1 to Sevilla. They went crashing out, really. I mean, they just didn't look very good in any of the games they played.
Nah.
I just don't understand this penalty thing with Man United. I don't understand how they get so many.
No, it's a weird one.
Just to put it into perspective, basically. So Man United have had 21 penalties awarded to them this year. Maybe 22 after that last one, I'm not really sure. But just to put this into perspective, Hull City have been awarded the same amount of penalties, but spread over the last 15 years.
Yeah. It's bad.
I mean, you can say what you want about that, because obviously Hull may not they're not as good of a team, they're not in the opposition's box as much maybe. It's a long time to get 21 penalties, and 21 penalties for 1 year is a huge amount.
It's a ridiculous amount.
It's the most in the Premier League since at least the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it's just been the story of Man United's season. I mean, I know they've had a great season. Don't get me wrong, they've been great. They had a great start after we came back for the restart, and they managed to get up into the Champions League spaces, but there's so many penalties.
It's a lot.
No wonder Bruno Fernandes has scored so many goals, and the hype's all over him. He's a great player, but all of his goals come from penalties, and Man United get so many of them. But to be fair to them, before Bruno Fernandes came in, Man United was still getting a load of penalties, but they weren't scoring them.
At least they can score them.
Yeah. Sevilla actually had a really tough run, beating 2 English teams. They beat Wolves in the quarterfinals 1-0. I think Wolves are really going to struggle this next season because they had to win the Europa League to get any chance of European football.
Yeah.
Now they have no European football. They had that problem with financial fair play, which means they're pretty much not going to be able to spend any money unless they sell players. I think they're really going to struggle this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be easy for them at all.
I guess no Europe helps because their players aren't going to be playing as many games, but they're not going to be able to refresh their team. As good of a team as they have, you've got to refresh your team, get some new faces in there, get some new challenges. I think they're really going to struggle this year. I don't want to say they'll get relegated, but they could be bottom mid-table kind of team struggling. I think they have too much quality to be relegated, but it all depends what happens in the transfer window. They've already lost their right back Matt Doherty to Tottenham. He signed for Tottenham the other day, and the transfer window's still got quite a bit to go. So they could lose more players.
It'd be a shame because they were pretty decent this season, so...
Yeah, they were very decent. And, I mean, it's really because of Arsenal that they're not in Europe, because obviously Arsenal won the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And now they're in Europe because of that. Well, if Chelsea had won the FA Cup, Wolves would have got into the Europa League through 7th place in the Premier League. The other team in the final were Inter Milan, who took out Bayer Leverkusen in a close 2-1 fight in the quarterfinals, and then they absolutely smashed Shakhtar Donetsk 5-0 in the semis. And the final was a very thrilling one as Sevilla beat Inter Milan 3-2, and that was their 6th Europa League victory, which is no surprise really, as Sevilla have become like that team in the Europa League. If they're in it, you're expecting them to win it. A few years ago, they won it 3 times in a row.
Oh, wow.
They're like just one of them teams. They're really good in Europe, but they just can't get it done in the Champions League. They will have another chance in the Champions League because of this, but they're just... When they're in the Europa League, they do well.
Yeah.
They've got a very good chance of winning it. And like I said, this 6th title is the record for the competition.
Wow.
Champions League, we had a lot of action here. We'll start with the quarterfinals. PSG had a sensational comeback against Atalanta. They had 2 stoppage time goals, one in the 90th minute and one in the 93rd minute, to stop the surprises of the tournament, Atalanta getting through to a semi-final. Unfortunately, Atlanta couldn't keep up their goal-scoring form, which has killed so many other teams in this competition. RB Leipzig sent Atletico Madrid crashing out by beating them 2-1. Atletico had their cautious style of play as always, and it didn't quite work out like it did against Liverpool. The most shocking result of the Champions League, Bayern Munich beat Barcelona 8-2.
Yeah, that really did surprise me. I mean, it's Barcelona.
I didn't watch much of the game, but when I did watch it, basically this is what I saw. Barcelona, I remember turning it on. Barcelona literally passed it to one of Bayern Munich's players in their own box, and Bayern Munich didn't score somehow. I think it was actually Jordi Alba that cleared it off the line, but Barcelona's defence was shocking. It made Chelsea look good. Just Barcelona's team in general, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. They have the best player in the world, Messi.
Yeah.
They have such a good team. I tell you what it is, they're getting old. They've got a lot of old players. You could see it in the game. They were so much slower.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich's team is so much younger. They had so much more pace. They were just hungry for it. Bayern Munich could have scored about 15 goals in this game.
Wow.
I'm surprised they only scored 8. It should have been double digits at least. And I said at this point Bayern were going to take some beating, and they definitely would have. Surprisingly but unsurprisingly, Man City failed again in the Champions League. They couldn't get past the quarterfinals again. Since Guardiola was taken over, they have not made it past the quarterfinals.
That's so weird.
And this has put some questions in football fans' minds as whether Guardiola is actually as good of a manager as you think, because he can't get it done in the Champions League. He spends so much money on his teams. I mean, just look how much Man City have spent on their team.
They're a lot of money.
Yeah. Is he as good of a manager as people think? He's still one of the best managers, I mean, but it's interesting because when he did actually win his 2 Champions Leagues with Barcelona, I mean, that Barcelona team could have won them Champions Leagues without any manager.
Yeah.
That's how good them teams were. He went to Bayern Munich and didn't win any Champions Leagues in his few years there. He actually hasn't won a Champions League in like the last half decade.
Oh, wow.
His last Champions League victory was in 2011.
Yeah.
It's been
that's a
9
long time.
years, and look at the teams he's had.
I mean, Man City are a phenomenal team, but if they can't do it with them, then, you know, it's...
But to be fair to Man City, well, not to be fair to Man City, to be fair to Guardiola, I guess, his team doesn't have a defence.
Yeah,
really.
that's it.
Man City's defence let them down a lot. But yeah, to lose 3-1 to Lyon, and I mean, in this game, we had probably the miss of the decade by Raheem Sterling in the 86th minute. Anyone who's a football fan knows about this miss. It should have put Man City level, but instead Lyon went and scored another goal and won 3-1. It was a horrific miss. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. Then we move on to the semi-finals. PSG absolutely outplayed RB Leipzig. It was a whitewash. They could have been more than 2-0 up at half-time. Interestingly, Kimpembe, the PSG centre-back, probably should have been sent off. He had a yellow card, and then he went in for a reckless tackle on one of the Leipzig players. And it definitely looked like a second yellow at least, but he didn't get sent off. That could have changed the game. But PSG went on to win it 3-0, and that actually put PSG into their first Champions League final ever.
Really?
And not much to talk about in the other semi-final. Bayern absolutely cruised past Lyon 3-0. No surprise there. The Champions League final was actually better than the score suggests. It was 1-0. Bayern beat PSG 1-0. I don't know how the first half was scoreless. There was quite a few chances that should have been scored, and Mbappe for PSG had the pick of the chances and definitely should have scored, especially a player of his quality. PSG should have probably been 1-0 up into half-time. The first half of this Champions League final was the first time Bayern Munich had failed to score in the first half since the restart.
Oh, wow.
And they definitely should have scored.
Yeah.
It was a very tight match, but Bayern actually ended up managing to see the game out, and they definitely deserved to win based off their performance over the course of the competition. They were head and shoulders above everyone else. And PSG's best players just didn't turn up for them in the final, unfortunately. Some interesting news for League 2 is that Macclesfield Town have actually been relegated after not finishing bottom, because the EFL have won an appeal against a point deduction, which should have been placed upon them.
Yeah.
Because Macclesfield had some financial troubles at the start of the season. But the EFL actually won the appeal, and they had 4 points deducted. And that put them below Stevenage, and now they're going down. So yeah, that's a controversial one.
Yeah.
The EFL strikes again against another financially struggling team.
I don't like that rule in football. I really don't like it. I mean, it can change it so much, and it just seems a little unfair.
Watford, the team who loves managers, or loves different managers, should I say, they have appointed their new boss, Vladimir Ivic. He is formerly of Maccabi Tel Aviv in the Israeli League. Personally, I feel like they would be much better off with Nigel Pearson, who took them out of the relegation zone. They were bottom of the league at Christmas. Nigel Pearson comes in, takes them out of the relegation zone, and then gets sacked.
I do feel like that was very harsh. I mean,
they would be much better off in the Championship with Nigel Pearson, because we don't know who this Vladimir Ivic really is. He's managed in the Israeli League. To go into the Championship with that Watford team,
I mean, it's a big jump.
I don't see them coming back up.
No.
Barcelona unsurprisingly sacked their manager Quique Setien after their 8-2 loss to Bayern. No surprise there, like I said. Ronald Koeman is actually going to be the one to take over there. That team is an absolute mess. They are having a proper clear out. Luis Suarez has been told that he can leave.
Oh, really?
Luis Suarez is still a good striker, but you can tell he's lost a step.
Yeah.
Because he's getting older, but he's still a really good striker, but he's just not quick enough now. And he's definitely lost a step. And Messi has said that he wants to leave Barcelona and he's handed in a transfer request. Now,
Wow.
this is a shock, because Messi has obviously been at Barcelona his entire career.
Wow, this is a shock.
The issue with this, there's no way anyone can afford him. Because obviously in Spain, it is a rule, you have to have a release clause in your contract. The club can set this at whatever they want.
Oh,
Messi's
God.
release clause is in excess of £600 million.
Oh, that's a lot.
And Messi and his lawyers have tried to get around this, and they've tried to have talks with the club about lowering it or whatever, but Barcelona won't budge. £600 million is what it's going to take.
That's a lot of money.
Unless they work something out for a lower price.
Yeah, because I mean, even if people can afford it, are they really going to pay that much for a player that is a bit older?
To
even
be
if
fair,
it is Messi.
Messi is still the best player in the world. There's no doubt in that. On this terrible Barcelona team and the stuff that he's still doing.
Yeah.
Like, he's still scoring so many goals and assisting so many goals. He's still the best player in the world.
Okay.
And let's be honest, if a team paid 600 million for him, they're going to gain that back in shirt sales.
That is true.
As soon as Messi gets to that team, he is going to sell out every store in the world of his shirts.
Yeah, everyone's going to want it.
So let's talk about the Premier League fixtures. We've got the opening weekend fixtures. So obviously the Premier League comes back on the 12th of September.
Yeah.
On the 12th of September, the games are going to be Crystal Palace and Southampton, new Premier League team Fulham against Arsenal, Liverpool against newly promoted Leeds, Tottenham and Everton, newly promoted West Brom against Leicester,
Great.
and West Ham versus Newcastle United. The newly promoted Premier League teams have not been given an easy first
No,
game.
they've kind of been thrown in at the deep end, especially Leeds with Liverpool.
Arsenal, Liverpool and Leicester, they're three teams fighting for European football. And obviously Liverpool are the champions. They're not given an easy game.
No, that could literally kill all their momentum from the outset.
That's the thing. You as a championship team, you need to take that momentum from getting promoted. But having a game like that to open up.
Ouch.
The 14th of September sees Brighton take on Chelsea, who had a pre-season game the other day and drew 1-1, interestingly. On that same day, we also have Sheffield United and Wolves, which is going to be an interesting match. See if Sheffield United can continue their form from last season and see what Wolves can manage to do.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think they might struggle this year. The last two fixtures are... The date's basically yet to be confirmed. Yeah. But it's going to be Burnley and Manchester United and Man City and Aston Villa.
Oh.
Well, we have an interesting story, but I was tempted to put it in the balls are up section to start off with, but then some more information came up about it and I felt it wasn't really a balls up moment, depending on which side of the story you look from.
It's not really very clear right now.
But Manchester United and England captain Harry Maguire has been given a suspended sentence of 21 months and 10 days in prison after his trial on the Greek island of Syros. He was found guilty of repeated bodily harm, attempted bribery, and violence against public employees and insult after arrest.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Now, it is a suspended sentence, so it's not going to happen straight away, obviously. I don't know what this means for Manchester United and England. Like,
I mean...
is he actually going to go to jail?
Yeah.
He has been withdrawn from the England squad due to this.
Yeah.
But from Maguire's perspective, it's a completely different story, because he says like he felt like he was being kidnapped at the start when he got arrested, and they say that he said that they kicked his legs and said that that was going to be the end of his career.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely ridiculous, if that's true.
Clearly not an England fan.
But all this occurred from apparently his sister was injected with something and she ended up passing out.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So
from his perspective, it's just like, it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
Because obviously he lost the trial and was arrested and put on a suspended sentence. So it depends how you look at it, really. But it's just a very confusing story, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on with that, and I mean, this is gonna affect a lot. I mean, is he gonna play for United this season? Is he not?
It honestly depends which side of the story you look from,
Yeah.
and what perspective you take on it, because I don't really know much more than that. But moving on from that to the first proper game of the season, the first trophy that was up for grabs, which was the Community Shield. Football fans are kind of like, do we really care about this tournament? It's kind of a pre-season friendly, but you get a trophy at the end of it. But it was a very good match between two good teams, Arsenal and Liverpool. And Arsenal actually won. It was 1-1 at the end of regulation, but Arsenal won 5-4 on penalties.
Would not see that come in.
So the takeaways from this is basically Aubameyang is very, very good, and if Arsenal were to lose him, they would be screwed. He's easily their best player, and hopefully for them he signs a new contract, because he is one of the world's best players, I would say. His last few years in the Premier League, he's always been up there for the Golden Boot. He scores so many goals, he does so many big things for that team, and with Arteta coming in and completely transforming that team, you have to say, and now winning a trophy, Arsenal could be in for a very decent future.
Yeah.
And I would expect to see them up there at the top of the Premier League again, if not this year, then at least in the next couple of years.
They need it after this season.
They haven't really done a lot in the transfer market, which I'm surprised about. I thought they would. But holding on to Aubameyang is their main concern.
Yeah.
Because they already have a few good young players. I don't know whether we should be concerned about Liverpool though, because obviously to the end of last season,
they've not been.
they dropped off. Obviously they already won the Premier League, so you can kind of say, oh yeah, they didn't really care about that. And the Community Shield is not a massive tournament, but you want to win every trophy.
Yeah.
They played a very good team. Like, they didn't play the kids.
Yeah.
They played their full strength team.
If you're not that bothered, then why would you play your full strength team?
The Liverpool at the start of last season would have crushed this Arsenal team.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we should be concerned about Liverpool for this next season, because they did not look good towards the end of last season, and they haven't started off this season well either.
You would have thought that they would want to try their hardest in everything to try and get ready for the upcoming season, but
we'll see how the start of the season goes, because you can't just base it off of one game. And
no.
Like I said, towards the end of last season they had the title wrapped up, so they weren't really that bothered. But it's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're going to move on to the transfers. There's been a lot. Going to start with David Silva leaving Man City. We always knew he was.
Yeah.
He said at the start of the year that he was going to leave after his contract expired, and unsurprisingly he's gone back to Spain. Well, I wasn't surprised about this, but I'm surprised about the team he chose. He's gone to Real Sociedad, a team that are fighting for the Europa League spaces in Spain, and they sometimes finish mid-table. They're a bit inconsistent. Be interesting to see how he does with them, actually.
It'll be weird not seeing him in the Premier League.
Definitely. David Beckham's Inter Miami has made their first high-profile signing of the window. They have signed Blaise Matuidi on a free from Juventus. He's a pretty good midfielder who's getting up there in age a bit. It's a typical American thing where the players go there to finish off their career, basically. But yeah, Inter Miami, a new team in the MLS. It'll be interesting to see how they do and see if they can pick up any more players, because every player over 30 that is in talks with their team about maybe leaving Inter Miami pop up and say, hey, do you want to come over to America?
Why not? Nice and warm weather.
One player they were looking at was Willian, who has moved to Arsenal from Chelsea.
That would do them some good.
I'm in two minds about this transfer, because Willian's still a good player.
Yeah.
He showed last year for Chelsea that he was still a good player. He is getting up there in age, so how long does he actually have left? I still think he has one, maybe two more seasons left, but it's an interesting transfer for Arsenal, because I thought they would have gone younger. I mean, I know Willian's a good player, but they've got some good young players. They've got out that can play out on the wings and out up front. I question the transfer strategy.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Don't understand it really. But like I said, Chelsea moving in a different direction. That's why they got rid of Willian, because he doesn't fit their transfer policy anymore. They're going for younger players. I thought Arsenal would have gone more towards that, because they've already got some good young players, and they bring in Willian to take away game time from them players. And how long does Willian actually have left? So yeah, it's a good transfer for now, but I question it.
Yeah, well, if he's only got 1 or 2 seasons left anyway, you know, I guess maybe...
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Aaron Ramsdale has become Sheffield United's new goalkeeper after obviously Dean Henderson went back to Man United from loan. I'm not sure what's happening with Dean Henderson, because obviously Man United have already got David De Gea, who has struggled the last few seasons, and Henderson is, or should be, England's #1 goalkeeper now, arguably.
Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does, but Aaron Ramsdale's a good pickup from Bournemouth for about 18.5 million. That's a perfect replacement for Sheffield United, a good young English goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Speaking of England goalkeepers, Joe Hart has moved to Tottenham on a free. He was at Burnley last year, obviously, and he's a good backup, I guess. I don't really understand why Tottenham... like I said, good backup. That's all I can really put on that.
Yeah.
Tottenham have been in and around the business all window so far. Vertonghen has left and moved to Benfica on a free. He was a big part of their success when they were, I'd say, challenging for titles, bottling titles. Yeah, he was a big part of when they actually had success and when they got to the Champions League final, obviously, and bottled that. And then Tottenham have done, like, basically a swap deal kind of with Southampton. Højbjerg has moved to Tottenham and Kyle Walker-Peters has made his loan to Southampton permanent. So they have switched teams. Højbjerg's a decent midfielder, but again, it seems like Tottenham are committing to the mid-table.
Yeah, that's...
Not exactly an outstanding transfer.
Nah.
Kyle Walker-Peters to Southampton's a good move for Southampton. Southampton have also signed a highly rated 21-year-old Mohamed Salisu from Valladolid in La Liga for about 10.9 million. He's a young centre-back. I'm not really sure how good he is, but clearly Southampton sees some potential. And it's not a massive transfer fee, so we'll have to see how he does.
Yeah.
So I said earlier that Tottenham have also signed Matt Doherty from Wolves. That's a really good transfer for Tottenham, I think. Matt Doherty was a key part of how Wolves play, and that's going to be a massive loss for Wolves. That's an undisclosed fee, so I'm not really sure how much it is. I guess that kind of tells the transfer. If it's like 50 million, which I don't think it'll be that much, that's not... I wouldn't pay 50 million for that, but if it's like around 25, 30 million, that's probably a really good piece of business. Another player that has left Burnley on a free is Jeff Hendrick. He's gone to Newcastle. He's been a good player for Burnley for the last few years, so he should be good to Newcastle's chances of pushing up into mid-table. An interesting one in Europe is Real Madrid youngster Rainier. I'm not really sure if that's how you say that name. It's Brazilian. I assume it's Rainier. But he's been loaned out to Borussia Dortmund for 2 years now. I think this is a very good move for both teams because Dortmund have been very good at developing youngsters over the last few years. We see Jadon Sancho over there at the England national doing very well. And this has actually worked out for Real Madrid before because they sent Hakimi out to Borussia Dortmund for 2 years, and this last year he has absolutely lit up the Bundesliga restart and turned into one of the best wing-backs in the world. So I think it's a very good move.
Yeah.
Rainier's a young player. He's going to get game time at Dortmund because that's what Dortmund do. They love to develop young players, and hopefully he'll come back to Real Madrid a much better player. And like I said, it's worked out before, so why not try it again?
Exactly.
And Dortmund are just getting this reputation for being a really good team for young players.
Yeah,
and
apparently.
We've actually seen another young English player, Jude Bellingham, for Birmingham. I believe he has decided to follow Jadon Sancho and go to Borussia Dortmund.
I mean, why not?
It's a top team. You know you're going to get game time.
Yeah, which
you're not
is
going
what
to
you
be
need.
wasted at a top English team.
And just sat on the bench.
Like, because you could go to like someone like Man United or someone and just get loaned out for the next 5 years, and it's just going to be wasted. But you just go to a team like Borussia Dortmund who's willing to give you a chance. And
it sounds great.
like I said, it's worked out for Jadon Sancho because Jadon Sancho left Man City to go to Borussia Dortmund, and it works out. Chelsea have been the biggest spenders in the transfer window so far. They have signed Ben Chilwell from Leicester for 45 million.
I was not happy about that.
I think that's a really good signing for Chelsea. They had left-back problems. Marcus Alonso's very questionable out there. Defensive problems for Chelsea all season. And what have they done? They've signed defenders. Yes! I'm so glad, because at the start of the window, we signed Werner and Ziyech. And then we were looking at Havertz, obviously, and it's just, they're all attacking players. And I'm thinking, that defence is shocking.
Yeah.
We need some of them. And all of a sudden we've signed Chilwell for 45 million, which is a good piece of business, to be honest, for an English player, because English players tend to cost a lot more. My favourite signing for Chelsea is a free transfer from PSG of Thiago Silva, the centre-back, who has captained PSG for the last few years and led them to a Champions League final. He is getting on a bit. He's like 35, I think. He's on a one-year deal with an option of a second. I love this transfer because obviously the young defenders are not good enough yet.
Yeah.
We saw that last year.
Yeah.
Thiago Silva has been there and has been doing it for many years. His experience is going to be key to the young Chelsea team.
Yeah, they need that.
He can obviously still do it. He's led PSG to a Champions League final and it's free. It's on a one-year deal. He's just that kind of player in the dressing room is going to change everything.
Yeah, I mean, this could really boost Chelsea up
Absolutely.
the table.
Chelsea's defence has just got so much better with Chilwell and Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
And it allows them young defenders to learn from a fantastic world-class defender and to take a year or two to get better and be ready.
Yeah, that's definitely what they need.
You can go with young players, but they've got to be ready.
Yeah, you can't just throw them in and hope for the best.
You can't just throw any youngster in and expect to be in the Champions
Yeah.
League. You've got to have players like Thiago Silva who's going to lead the team from the front.
Yeah.
Chilwell and Thiago Silva became the third and fourth signings with... See, Kai Havertz still hasn't moved. It's been the talk of the transfer window since before the season even ended. There's been talks of, like, there's a fee agreed, but they still need to work out... Or there's been personal terms agreed, but it's the transfer fee that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because Bayer Leverkusen obviously want a lot of money for him. But apparently a fee's been agreed, but nothing's been absolutely confirmed yet. But it's still looking very likely to happen. And Chelsea have actually signed another defender. A young 21-year-old ex-Nice defender, Malang Sarr, becomes transfer number 5, and he is also on a free transfer. So Chelsea are not only doing a lot of business, but they're doing smart business.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing, because obviously COVID has hit. Money's gone down.
Yeah, even to big clubs like Chelsea.
And they've got to save money if they want Havertz, because he's going to cost in excess of 90 million. They've already spent 50 plus on Werner, 30 plus on Ziyech, 45 on Chilwell. They've got to get these free transfers in, and they're getting some great ones. And again, it's defenders. Just need a goalkeeper now.
And if your defenders are good enough, then your goalkeeper won't have to do
but
as
all
much
of
work.
it's nothing if your goalkeeper can't save any shot that comes at him.
True.
But Chelsea have been in the media linked with a lot of goalkeepers, so hopefully one of them can come. And clearly Chelsea don't have a lack of funds.
Apparently not.
Leeds have signed their first player of the season, and it's actually a club record transfer. They've signed Rodrigo from Valencia for 26 million. He actually had a spell in the Premier League with Bolton Wanderers. That is an age ago.
Gonna say,
Yeah, he was last in the Premier League with Bolton. He was only on loan, and he's been a pretty decent player for Valencia, but it's one of these where you see players come over from European leagues like the Spanish league, especially strikers, and you see them struggle.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a guarantee now. They've spent a lot of money on him for their club, and they're needing him to work out, but we've seen this kind of transfer not work out many times before. Lazio, who were actually looking like they were going to be the ones to sign David Silva at the start of the transfer window, but he ended up going to Real Sociedad. They've signed a different Spanish veteran in Pepe Reina from AC Milan. Obviously, he was loaned out to Aston Villa for the second half of the Premier League season and helped them stay up. So yeah, he's moved on. Everton and Carlo Ancelotti are starting to make moves in the transfer window. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti is a lot better than a mid-table manager, and he's got a lot of contacts, and he started by signing Napoli midfielder Allen for 25 million. And they are also looking into James Rodriguez, who is not wanted by Zidane at Real Madrid. So, I mean, if they get James Rodriguez, that'll be a very good signing. And Everton definitely looking like they're moving in the right direction. Because that's the thing with Everton, they've made a lot of bad transfers in the recent years. They've spent a lot of money, but on the wrong players. I'm going to butcher this name. Ever since I wrote this name down the other day, I know I'm going to butcher it. It's Eberici Eze. I don't know. He's previously of QPR. He's moved to Crystal Palace. He was looking pretty decent in the Championship last year, and that's for a fee of 19.5 million. So yeah, I'm going to look forward to saying his name over the next season. I'm going to have to go on Google and learn how to say that. Brighton have lost one of their best players, unfortunately. This is a massive loss in Aaron Morty, who has been one of their best players for the last few years. And he's moving on to China.
Oh, okay.
He has gone to Shanghai SIPG, and I'm sure he's going to get paid a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's a big loss for Brighton. But obviously they did sign Adam Lallana from Liverpool.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
For a free. So if he can get his career back on track after his injuries, then that'll be a good replacement. So it may not end up being too bad, but it all depends on if Adam Lallana can actually get back to the level that he needs to be at, especially after the terrible injuries. Now we're going on to the balls it up section.
Yeah, we have got a couple from Speedway. Heat 4 in round 1 has to be a buzz up moment, chugging off the wild card. It was his first race. I literally said, I put my name on, I was like, he has a good chance of winning this race. And what does he do? Touch the tape. So he was out, and then
a bit too anxious.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's the nerves got the better of him.
Yeah.
Understandably, I mean, it's World Speedway. It's a big deal. But so he was excluded in that race for touching the tapes. So the reserve of the meeting was brought in. Guess what they do? Touch the tapes. So I think again, nerves. These are young riders, this is a big deal for them, but luckily on the third attempt, the second reserve of the meeting did not touch the tapes, and we actually got the race done. Also in round 1, we have to talk about the cameramen for BT Sport. In Heat 20, for some reason, they were filming the back 2 riders, which weren't battling for places, and missing the front 2 riders, which were fighting for first place. And I was literally screaming at the TV, like, show the front! And even the commentators, Nigel and Kelvin, were saying we didn't want to see what's happening at the back, we want to see what's happening at the front, where it's an actual battle. But nope, didn't get to see it.
Wow.
So we also have a balls up from the second round of the Grand Prix with the referee. It just didn't seem like they were on the ball with the starts of the race.
Missing so many jumps.
Yeah, they missed 2 jump starts and gave riders a warning after the race. Obviously at that point the result already stands, so you know they've benefited from this jump start. But then
and Chuganov jumps the start, finishes like second,
and he didn't even get a warning.
Didn't get a warning.
So apparently this ref just wanted to close his eyes and let everyone jump the start.
Apparently. Right, so we're going to go on to the NFL now. We've got a big one. Because obviously the players and team staff are separated due to COVID-19. Well, Seahawks rookie Kamar Siverand was cut from the team after he was caught sneaking a girl into a team hotel disguised as a player.
What?
Yeah. So obviously no one else is allowed in the team hotel apart from team members.
And he's snuck in a girl dressed as a player.
Yeah. Girl disguised as a player. He tried to sneak her in. And
how do you disguise a girl as a player?
Well, clearly he didn't do it very well.
We'll just put a helmet and a jersey on, get some shoulder pads. Come on, let's go in. No one will notice.
It's just ridiculous. So as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a ball-up moment.
Oh, that is the perfect
ridiculous
balls-up
and
moment.
He's been cut from the Seahawks now. So.
Oh no.
And the biggest balls up is Barcelona. you know. Just Barcelona.
Just Barcelona with that 8-2.
They lost 8-2, their team's falling apart, everyone wants to leave, they want everyone to leave.
Yeah.
Ronald Koeman's going to have a bigger job than he probably thought.
I think going to a club like Barcelona, let the players do what they do best.
Yeah,
you know?
no.
But
Everyone's getting old, everyone wants to leave, they need a whole overhaul. They haven't helped themselves out with the Arthur and Pjanic swap. That's again another good young player swapped for an older player.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like they're going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's completely wrong. And ever since Guardiola left, I mean, you can say what you want about Guardiola not being not being as good of a manager as everyone thinks. Ever since
he's
left, Barcelona have not been anywhere near where they were, and they did end up they did win the Champions League in 2015 when Neymar was there, but then he left and then it all went downhill again. Barcelona just haven't got the strategy right.
No.
And that is the end of the podcast. It has been a long one, like I thought it was.
It has been a long podcast.
Good luck editing this. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry.
Wow, this is going to take a while.
So yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with the next episode. And you can check out our previous podcasts if you've not already, and follow us on social media, which is Instagram. We have Facebook, we have got Spotify, YouTube, and Mixcloud.